This is a Geek Nerd Podcast's production. All songs, sound effects, and themes are used under fair use copyright.
Follow at Geek Nerd Pod on Twitter to keep up with all of Geek Nerd Podcast's projects, and join our Patreon at patreon.com/geeknerd with tiers starting at $1 a month.
Be sure to check out the Geekly's Facebook page at, you guessed it, facebook.com/The Geekly.
As always, the best support is word of mouth. If you like our shows, subscribe, leave a review, tell your friends, drop us a note on Twitter.
Enjoy the show. Hey everyone, hey Lex, how are you doing today?
Oh, I am doing fantastic. You know, it was like a very scintillating week of television watching. Why don't we just jump right into the rain, which is kind of apt because it just stopped raining.
Come stay with me.
I have this vague memory that season 1 was good, or maybe only the first half of season 1 was good. I mean, there had to be something for us to keep doing every season. But I was incredibly bored this season and very frustrated because it's a good idea. But I think the moment, it was either in season 1 or season 2, where the rain stopped being a threat, the show just fell off a cliff.
Yeah, I mean, you said the rain stopped being a threat, it stopped raining, period, as well, which is, you kind of think having that threat throughout the whole show would be, it's such a great device, but they frequently just have sunny weather.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that, but you're right, it completely stopped raining. It used to be, it would rain at least once a day, every day, and they would have to, they had, a certain number of hours that they could be out, and so, every mission had this urgency to it, and then they realized that the rain was no longer dangerous, and it's but the show is called Rain. The rain should still be dangerous. That's just my thinking.
While watching this season, I came to the conclusion that I've never created any kind of emotional attachment to any of the characters. And I think that's why watching season 3, none of it was engaging whatsoever. The stakes are weirdly small. We never had any allusion to what's going on in the outside world. And so it felt like a very small show, low stakes, and just involving people that I couldn't give a shit about. And that was season 3. And I think, we watched Dark season 3, obviously, a month ago. And I think I ended by saying, I really don't want to watch Rain season 3 now. Because by comparison, it will just seem even worse. And it does. This just didn't engage me at all. It had another one of my kind of least favourite tropes in it as well. The idea that, just young adults run everything. And, a scientist says to Rasmus, "You're children, why should we listen to you?" And that's kind of how I felt for a great deal of it. They would walk into buildings full of armoured guards and they would somehow overpower them. These two people, Martin and Patrick.
Well, I mean, in their defense, Martin and Patrick were actually soldiers.
I think 2 on 50. I
had a problem with that as well. That it was the scrappy band of survivors being able to take on these well-armed armies. Yeah, it's very unrealistic. But out of everybody, Patrick and Martin were the most capable.
What did you make of, and we won't say what it was, but the big new concept that was delivered in this season? Because I honestly, this isn't The Walking Dead where they've been around for 10 seasons. The whole kind of new element that this season revolved around, I just thought it was just such lazy storytelling. It's the way to very quickly end this kind of TV show, and it just felt so convenient.
I've been trying to decide if this comment is spoiler or non-spoiler. If it's spoiler, I guess you can just edit it out. I realized while watching season 3 of The Rain, I had a little bit of an identity crisis because, as our listeners may or may not know, my subject of research is the post-apocalyptic. And as I was watching this, I just found myself so profoundly bored, and I did not want, I dreaded watching it, and I was thinking am I sick of the end of the world? Have I reached that point where I've consumed too many post-apocalyptic scenarios. What am I going to do next? And I realized about halfway through that the thing that I don't like is that, or rather, I discovered that the thing that I was hoping for most was no hope. I'm really, really tired of the optimistic end to the post-apocalyptic dystopian narrative. I can't think of a single one where at the end hasn't had some sort of hopefulness. Maybe it's not a happily ever after hopefulness, but even The Road, the kid goes off and finds a new family after his dad dies, like almost immediately. That's a hopeful ending. Even in The Walking Dead, the whole thing revolves around, a new society being built and kind of finding a new normal and rebuilding the world. Even Snowpiercer, same thing. I mean, it's a weird hope because I think they're going to die or be eaten by a polar bear, but, they've escaped the train and the world is livable again. And even if it's a thing where like all of humanity gets murdered off, then you see like little green shoots where nature is healing itself and the world will like be better without humanity in it. And I want the end of the world to be the end of the world for once. That's what I want, and nobody does it, and it's starting to really piss me off.
That's a really, really good point. Like that's such a very interesting perspective. And when you said the little green shoots appearing, like in my mind's eye, I saw that. I can't remember what film, but I just conjured something from a film I've seen. I know exactly what you're talking about. I think you need to come up with a new genre, the post-apocalyptic. I think would be really good. It feels like the kind of thing like you get in an Agatha Christie where Poirot's kind of like walking around the table where everybody's kind of sat. And he says, and the killer is, and he'll point to somebody, and as an audience we'll be like, who the fuck is that? It's this third act new element that is the kind of resolution to the whole story. That's what season 3 did for me. The new element added, it felt like the kind of thing, if Walking Dead, God knows what season they're on now, I don't watch it, but if they introduced something that was a way out, you'd think, okay, they've earned it. But the convenience of season 3 is all I'm left with. It's all I was thinking about throughout the whole thing, and kind of feels like a sour ending. Do you feel that you weren't enjoying this as much due to what you said, but also because we're kind of living it? We're as close to living an apocalypse as we've ever been in our lifetimes right now. Do you think that plays any part?
I did consider that when I was having my existential crisis about why post-apocalyptica wasn't like scratching my itch the way it usually does. Early on, I would have said yes without question. In those the first few weeks when we were getting used to lockdown and nobody knew what was going on, and there was all of this worry and fear. And yes, there's still worry and fear, but I'm kind of over it now. Once I decided to stop listening to the government and to use my own brain, then things got a lot better. I did find like early on I didn't have as much of a tolerance for like stressful, tense media. No, I think it wasn't done very well. Even the kind of twist in this season, it's an interesting idea. I was intrigued by the idea. You make a good point about it being kind of a last minute Hail Mary, and it probably should have been seeded into the first season if they were actually going to use this. Maybe its full purpose wasn't discovered until the third season, but like it should have been around at least. I think the explanation for it was very lazy. The kind of acceptance of it was very lazy. Anyway, they could have made more about it, but I mean that's kind of what could be said about this whole show is they took a potentially really interesting concept that could have explored a lot of issues and a lot of themes and just been done in a very kind of interesting way, and they went the safest, most mundane route with it, which was just very, very frustrating, very disappointing.
In some ways I feel like they thought they had one season, and 2 and 3 have been an afterthought that were never planned, and that's why it's kind of fallen down, because I think season 1 was the strongest. But in some ways it also feels like they thought they had 5 seasons, and suddenly someone's like, nope, sorry, you're down to 3, and that's why there's this huge game-changing idea that's come into season 3, which has kind of broken it in many respects. It was just too easy, and I just didn't care for it. What are your thoughts of the show as a whole? I mean, would you recommend this to people?
No.
I think the most important thing for me is if you've got a show called the rain has to be the antagonist, like throughout the whole thing. You have to constantly be planning your life around how do we survive while there is rain. You know, they need to be going out finding food. Oh shit, did I just hear thunder? They need to be going out getting medicine. Oh shit, did I just hear thunder? You can't just go from the rain in, I think they were Denmark, to just beautiful sunshine in season 3. The rain always has to be there in the background as this unrelenting opponent.
Well, like, I mean, and even in terms of the rain being a threat, it doesn't always have to be raining because, you know, it rains and the water doesn't just go away. Like, you know, it drips off of leaves that's in the grass. Like, if it rains, can they walk through the grass immediately after? Do they have to wait for it to dry? Do they have to, like, check to see? I mean, what does it do to the water supply? Like, there are a million different ways that could have gone with this that could have made it very tense and very complicated and difficult for the people to survive in it. But they did. They just went the really, really easy way. They found shelters very easily. You could say that the pollen bunkers were kind of an easy way out, but it could have also been a really interesting plot device to kind of piece together what had happened by going to the different bunkers and finding different things and different bits of information and kind of putting the puzzle together that way. But I feel like once Apollon, the organization, kind of appeared, the interesting potential just sort of evaporated. Like, it just became about this huge corporation that with, you know, advanced science and technology, and, you know, everybody was safe, more or less. Like you said, there were no stakes anymore. There was no risk. There was no threat. I mean, yeah, the Apollon was kind of shady and creepy, but again, they like had free reign of wherever they wanted to go. Like you said, like if they wanted something, they just did it. Like, I mean, every once in a while, these guards would appear and look very menacing and threatening, but you never really saw them unless they were dragging somebody from one place to another. Like, there weren't like guards stationed anywhere. There were scientists. That was it. So it was kind of like, all right, what's really so scary about this? But yeah, I think overall it was a big disappointment. I wanted it to be better. I expected it to be better, and it just kind of, yeah. I probably will just forget it.
As the guy that's into kind of post-apocalyptic, what would you recommend to people listening to this that's, you know, the exact same genre but just does everything better? It doesn't necessarily even have to be a TV show, maybe a film.
Well, the one that I keep going back to, I mean, it's basically the opposite because the world's kind of a desert, but the Book of Eli is pretty brilliant, even after you've seen it and like figured out the twist. I like a lot of the things they do. I mean, obviously the road is really great. It's not an easy film to watch. To be honest, I think like there really isn't a lot of good post-apocalyptica out there, and that's unfortunate. And maybe it is because, well, actually, I'm gonna like mangle her name, and I apologize because I'm in love with her. Needy Okorafor. She's a American Nigerian author. She wrote a novel called Who Fears Death, among several other things. She's a brilliant writer, and if you're looking for kind of post-apocalyptic speculative fiction, anything even remotely near that genre, you know, Afrofuturism, definitely like pick up one of her books. Like, she's a brilliant writer. And like I said, I'm in love with her. She's brilliant. I follow her on Twitter, and one day.
Okay, well, on that creepy note, let's move on to Project Power.
I have to admit, I did not look up anything about this, and when I pulled it up on Netflix and I saw the screenshot of like Jamie Foxx and the whole like action thing, I like literally said out loud, "What the fuck, Jules?"
Yeah, I get that a lot. I have that effect on people. Yeah, Project Power, a pill that gives you 5 minutes of a superpower. It's random for everybody, but once you kind of get yours, that's the one you would always get if you keep taking the pill. What did you think of it?
Well, like, after I watched it, I do that thing where I go and, like, I look up other reviews just to see if I'm being an asshole or not, and most of the like the ratings and stuff were like 3 out of 5, 50-60%. I think like the highest was like 73%. Some of the actual written reviews were like, oh, this is great, silly was used a lot, but like in terms of a praise word, I don't see that at all with this genre as being a good thing. But I will say, before like I rip it to pieces, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Jamie Foxx, and Dominique Fishback, they were all amazing, particularly Dominique Fishback's like rapping skills. I loved that bit. But in terms of the story, okay, being unoriginal in and of itself isn't the worst thing a film can be. First of all, like plenty of creators have been able to take totally uninspired ideas and do something very cool and interesting with them. Looking at the MCU over here for a lot of that, but Project Power is not one of those films. There are seeds of a great story here. There are some really like worthy topics to discuss and explore. The whole history of the medical industry and its treatment of black women, the government's treatment and use of disenfranchised communities for non-consensual testing and experiments, the history and current status of New Orleans. There are a lot of really good ideas in here, but it doesn't actually deal with any of them. It just kind of like skims over the surface of them, leaving this kind of messy, jumbled, chaotic soup of half-formed ideas. And as a result of that, the characters are also left to stagnate, and they're pretty much at the end who they are in the beginning, and nothing's really changed for any of them. You get these kind of supercharged action scenes and way overused visuals. Like, if we never have another drug scene that has a close-up on a pupil doing something weird, it will be too soon. Like, and there was about like 25 of those in this film, which was only like an hour and something, maybe 2 hours. Anyway, there were too many shots of people's eyeballs in this. I think the only time it's ever been used well is in Requiem for a Dream, which again is a brutal film to watch, but like they used it maybe 2 or 3 times and it was absolutely purposeful each and every time, whereas this was just like every time somebody popped a pill, eyeball, doing something weird and crazy. Way too much. This film is only being talked about because there is literally nothing else out there right now. Like, if Marvel and DC had their summer the way they planned to, if the other films in the industry had actually come out the way they planned to, nobody would even remember that Project Power existed.
I've seen a lot of films recently where you can kind of look at them and think, oh, there's the story, but you've sprinkled in superpowers. Code 8 kind of feels a bit like that. Or you'd say, oh, there's the story, but you've decided to put Pokemon in it, like Detective Pikachu. I felt that so much while I was watching this, to the point where I just wondered if superpowers were kind of even necessary. The story here is the racial equality, as you said. The story here is people going to certain neighbourhoods and experimenting with drugs on minorities. That's the story. But I think the creators of this haven't had the balls to basically decide to tell that story. So they've dressed it up in kind of these superpower clothes. And they've ended up doing a disservice to everything involved. And I think you're right. The only reason this is getting any kind of chat by reviewers or on Twitter or people in general is because there's nothing really to compete against it. It just feels to me like a third party comic that's been adapted frame by frame into a film. Do you remember we watched Polar with Mads Mikkelsen? That's exactly how I felt, like this, kind of undercooked, and the people making it needed to maybe think about a better way to put this kind of story on the screen, because I think as a graphic novel this would probably work exceptionally well. You know, it would have a far better chance, is what I'm saying. But this isn't how you tell this kind of story.
On that note, another very disappointing week in film and television for those of the geek persuasion. So we could just probably presume this will continue like it is. Maybe somebody will come up and do like a Mythic Quest inspired TV show. I mean, I feel like at this point a lot of industries have had enough time to kind of come up with backup plans and be like, all right, we've got it figured out, let's do this. Or maybe they just spent like months saying, okay, we can just wait it out and you know, we'll create more stuff when this is all over, except it's not over. Anyway, that's our episode. We'll be back in 2 weeks.
See you then.